Welcome to Origins, where we go more in depth into the origins of your favorite heroes and villains. Today we're going to finally come to the end of our initially planned Lantern videos, but for those of you who have been asking, by request we're going to be explaining how Kylo became a White Lantern and how Guy Gardner became a Red Lantern, but they'll be coming out next week probably. Today it's time to discuss how the Blackest Night even began. When was the power of the Black Ring even revealed to the world? Now for those of you who are classic Green Lantern fans, you'll know Black Hand as a normal villain. So this is a retelling of his origin and how he went from being a normal Green Lantern villain to being the first and the most powerful Black Lantern. Now William Hand was a middle child in a family that owned a mortuary. While his family seemed normal, William Hand did not, as he had an unhealthy obsession with the dead. He would capture and stuff as many animals as he could in his spare time, and he seemed to enjoy making the dead appear alive. He considered the dead pretty, and his first kiss was with a corpse. But his parents began to see a problem when William took the family dog, killed it, and then stuffed it and put it in his room. This was actually a help for William though, because after dozens of psychologists, he figured out how to create a mask, how to create a facade to hide behind, a way to appear normal. He was still the black sheep of his family, but he was at least accepted and loved by them. But everything changed on the day that the giant red alien arrived. Atrocitus had been brought here to show Abin Sur the man who held the black light inside of him. But Atrocitus killed Abin Sur, and he built a weapon that would allow him to track down the future Black Lantern and absorb any light-based energies around him. He could prevent the entire Blackest Night from happening right then and there. But Sinestro and Hal Jordan stepped in, and they protected William Hand. Then, while William Hand watched, Hal and Sinestro captured and carried Atrocitus away from William Hand, sparing his life. Hal landed to ask if this young boy was okay, but William Hand heard a voice speaking to him, a dark voice, something that he felt had possessed him. It told him to run. It told him to get away from there. So he took Atrocitus' weapon, the one that allowed him to absorb light and darkness, and he fled, leaving the two lanterns there wondering, who was that boy? Maybe if Hal knew what William Hand would have become, he could have stopped him. But how could he know? William ran into the graveyard and he decided to try out this new absorbing weapon, but all he managed to do was blast a squirrel on the ground and create a grave. So he curled up in that grave to be closer to death, to be closer to what he felt was speaking to him. It was in this grave that he came to a conclusion. If this absorbing rod could potentially defeat the Green Lanterns, then he could use it against them. Because their light was just too bright, he needed to shut off the light. He needed to bring on the darkness. As he watched the Lanterns battle various enemies on the news, he dreamed of destroying them, and then he decided to create a costume. If he was going to challenge the Lanterns, the bringers of light, he couldn't do it as William Hand, even with this weapon. So he became the Black Hand. He then went off and fought with Hal Jordan frequently, always being defeated and always retreating back to the graveyard where he could just curl up in a grave and sleep and recoup. He was never successful in putting out the light. He couldn't even stop just one Green Lantern. But eventually, the light did go out by the hand of one of their own. Hal Jordan became possessed by the entity of fear, Parallax, and he successfully killed off the entire Green Lantern Corps. But that wasn't enough. There was still a little bit of the light left, a little bit for Black Hand to try and put out, and he tried to fight against that little bit of light. But eventually, Hal Jordan became the host for Spectre so he could redeem himself, and he found Black Hand and he forced him to answer for his crimes. And in this meeting, he took Black Hand's right hand to allow him to live up to the name. But things didn't finally get better for Black Hand then, no. He found himself being abducted by German-speaking aliens who performed experiments on him, searching for his supposed power. And while they didn't find any of his power, they did restore his hand and gave it a life of its own. With this hand, he was not only able to hear death, but he was now able to touch death, and he was getting closer to whatever that voice that was speaking to him was. With this connection, death was able to show him everything. He was able to see everyone who had died. He was able to see everyone who had escaped from death by being resurrected. He could see what he was going to become, and the voice was speaking to him, and it told him, I want them all back. I want the dead back. So Black Hand accepted what he was, and he slowly roamed around until he eventually made his way back to his old home, where his family was surprised to see him, and in response to their surprise, he used the absorbing weapon to kill his brothers, to kill his mother, And when his father asked him why he was doing this, he answered, "Because this is what I do." And then he killed his father. He then sat down at the dinner table with bodies all around him, as the voice tells him, "One more death." So Black Hand lifted the absorbing weapon, and he shot himself in the head, killing himself right there and then. But this was all a part of the plan, as one of the rogue guardians of the universe arrives and says, "The sacrifice will suffice." The rogue guardian then vomits up the first black ring, and it goes right to Black Hand. "William Hand of Earth, rise!" And just like that, just like Ion, just like Parallax, the Predator, William Hand became the entity of the Black Lantern Corps. He became the first and only true Black Lantern. He was pleased. He finally had the power to put out the light. As the first Black Lantern, he has the power to reanimate any dead around them and control them as he sees fit. Basically, he can create his own zombie army on a whim. The ring itself will always regrow body parts and put them back into a working state, but outside of that, anybody who gets a Black Lantern ring basically just gets normal lantern powers and the ability to retain whatever abilities and powers they had before dying. If you're wondering where this story goes, you need to go check out our Blackest Night video and then the Brightest Day video, because very shortly we're going to be putting out a lot more Green Lantern videos, and you're going to see what eventually happens to Black Hand. If you learned something new, please give this video a like and follow us on Twitter at Comicstorian, where we can always chat about whatever comics you want, as long as we keep it to the 140 character limit that Twitter has. But I'm Benny from Comicstorian, and I'll see you guys next time.